You're listening to propsHR, an engaging startup. I'm your host, Cindy Windsor, along with my husband, Brad. We hope you'll follow our journey as a tech startup for employee recognition software with a social conscience. In addition to talking about our startup journey, we'll also talk about employee engagement and corporate charitable giving. If you'd like to learn more about our product, visit our website at propshr.com. Hi, I'm Cindy Windsor.
I'm Brad Windsor.
Today we have a special guest, Lori Lovens, who is with Innovation Savvy. And she's at the crossroads of people, purpose, and possibilities. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So today I'm really excited about our topic. We're going to be talking about purpose and what it means and what it means to businesses specifically. So Lori, let's dive right in. And why don't, will you help us define purpose?
Sure. Purpose simply is having some why, some reason for being, and generally, especially in the business world, it's something beyond profits. Right. So that's something that matters, that has meaning, that people care about. It's that affective heart space that we're talking about there.
So how are we seeing that today in the business world?
Oh, in a lot of different ways. You're seeing organizations and movements like conscious capitalism. You know, John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, he's been leading that for more than a decade. You see B corporations, which are benefit corporations, and they have a legal status that's different than a C corp. A typical corporation is first responsible to their shareholders. Mm-hmm. And so they cannot make decisions that don't have the shareholders' interest as the number one priority. So benefit corporations actually take into account that there are other ways, other benefits to serving society other than the bottom line. So Patagonia would be the highest profile corporation that actually convinced their shareholders to switch from a C Corp status to a B Corp, so that they can make decisions on sourcing rubber, on sharing their approach with competitors that they believe is in the best long-term interests of not only them, but the consumer. Mm-hmm. By having other competitors who are also in the space, they can bring down prices and make certain products more accessible. And in other ways, you see purpose in the business world. Well, first of all, social impact. Social entrepreneurship. Right. And there are even degrees, undergraduate, graduate degree level courses and programs in social entrepreneurship and social impact. So you see it showing up that way. More broadly in the business world, I think you see it showing up in this broader change of consumers driving purchases of products and services from organizations mm-hmm. that have some kind of higher purpose, some kind of connection to the environment or to a cause, some kind of interest in changing the world in a positive way, which has so many different aspects and connection. You know, you hear organizations now talking about they have to have like a branding for their organization mm-hmm. in order to attract talent.
Employer branding. That's like such a big buzzword now. I hear that all the time.
Yes. And it's true. I mean, Deloitte did a study last year in 2016 that showed, especially with millennials, mm-hmm. that more than 50% of them were not willing to work at an organization where there was a values misalignment.
With their personal values.
Right.
Okay.
What they care about and what the organization mm-hmm. really cares about and what they stand for. You've got it affecting hiring, retention, overall satisfaction.
Right. So basically it helps with engagement because those are all KPIs that relate back to engagement.
You know, it does help with engagement, and I think, you know, it helps on a number of different levels, mm-hmm. and it depends on how well they're doing it. So mm-hmm. I think of purpose as the why.
Right.
Engagement is the how.
Yes.
And that impact, those outcomes, is the what mm-hmm. they're delivering, right? From an innovation perspective.
Right.
So the engagement piece, I think, again, operates on a number of different levels. There's the personal purpose. You know, what do I care about in the world? What am I willing to make a conscious choice about, whether it's what I buy, where I work, how I interact with my community? There's leadership purpose. I worked with a large global organization a couple of years ago, not at all purpose-driven, right? And really a challenging culture to work within. But this was a very purpose-driven leader. So he had me come in and facilitate a purpose session with his leadership team. And so what we were able to do was say, you know what, we may not have it at a broader space, but I have the ability to influence the people on my broad team. And so what do we care about? What do we as leaders stand for? Because, you know, there's certainly the world-changing purpose, but there's also the fact that, and this is a quote, I believe, from Chip Conley, who wrote Peak, creating a great place to work is a meaningful way of giving back. And so when you think about the positive impact back to engagement, right, in his model, and it works within Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but his whole philosophy with his Joie de Vivre hotel chain in California is that if you do a great job of engaging your employees and creating a great place for them to work, then they're interacting with customers who are then have that experience. They're happier, more satisfied customers. So then guess what? Then shareholders are happy because it impacts the bottom line. You know, that's how I think kind of engagement really makes a difference when you are helping people reflect on their personal purpose at the team level, and then organizationally, culturally. That's one of the broad shifts that's happening as well, is so many organizations focusing on culture and fit when it comes to hiring.
Right.
So for a long time, and still with a lot of organizations, what they're primarily looking at is just that cognitive. Do they have the skills, the education, the work experience to do the job?
Right.
And now the buzzword and the simple definition that most of us use for culture is how business gets done around here. So many organizations are hiring specifically for culture fit. And what really falls into that is purpose, values, what has meaning for people. And it also then includes people's natural disposition or personality for collaboration. For team building and being part of a team. How much does that matter? So, and that's, I think, an important piece of engagement as well. How do we engage with one another's? How do we engage teams with the organization? And then again, how do we engage with maybe our broader stakeholder base?
When we say, a lot of times when people say purpose, people think religion. Because, you know, you think of purpose-driven life, and people associate that with religion. So it really is more, though, about humanity, right?
Or sustainability, right? That's
thing. Well, that's humanity, right? To sustain the earth.
Yeah.
So
for us.
It's sustainability for us. Yes. You can be a religious person and have similar purpose as a corporation if those things are aligned. Like if your thoughts, you want to help feed the poor, and the company that you work for has a huge program for Meals on Wheels or something. So that's still aligning with your purpose, even if your purpose is more religious based.
Yes, I agree. It can be religious based, but it absolutely doesn't have to be, especially in the business world. But I do think there is this recognition, whether you call it humanity or oneness, but that we are all interconnected.
Yes.
Us with our planet that we're living on, right? And it's all energy, and we're affected by the environment, and we affect the environment. We all have to work together. But I think there's more and more people every day who see that they do have choices in what they buy, what they wear, how they live. Part of this too, I mean, you even take it to people making choices to ride in Uber or Lyft or the Divvy bike system.
That's so interesting that you say that, because just because of the turmoil that Uber has gone through, I stopped using Uber because I felt like I didn't want to support their company, and so I will always use Lyft because of that. And now I know they're making changes, and it's important that they're making those changes, and I feel like maybe when there's some more positive things that come out about their culture shift, that I will switch back. But as a consumer, that's kind of how I'm using my voice.
That's funny. I didn't know that before we got on this call, but absolutely, I've done the same thing. I don't know whether it's been 6 months, 9 months, or whatever. whatever. But part of it for me was the turmoil in the marketplace, but then there was also the choice that when they made the option within the app that in terms of when they can track you,
yes,
they made the only option always or never.
Right.
As opposed to only when I'm using the app. And for me, I'm like, you don't need to be tracking me all the time. But because I have that setting, that means I have to manually enter where I want to be picked up. Or go back in and change the app. So there's a number of different things that, cause us to choose one, but and that's part of the privacy and how our decisions being made. But certainly the harassment issue is much bigger and deeper in the technology industry and the inequity. And I think that's definitely a lot of people voting with their feet, if you will, in terms of who they choose.
Well, you're right. I mean, I come from the tech side, so being a female in the tech world, like this is, it is a struggle. And so I'm going to support those businesses that, choose to target that head on and make amends and help out women in tech and do more for them. So
a lot of companies are doing the right thing right now. We tried to pull out of the Paris Accord, but half of our corporations said, well, we're going to do it for you, which is pretty cool. I couldn't imagine that 50 years ago. Yeah.
That's a great example, and they're putting their credibility and their finances absolutely behind that, and that's a great example of where there is a rallying point.
Yeah, and they don't have to do this. I couldn't imagine IBM doing that 50 years ago. I can imagine it now. They have a little personality, I think, at this point.
Well, it's interesting. I just saw that IBM has a work abroad for a month program as part of their, I think it's leadership development program.
Cool.
It's interesting because they're using it not only as a perk or a feel-good, they're actually very much weaving it into talent development and skills-based volunteering.
You know what? I met someone who works at IBM, participated in that, and she said every employee gets an opportunity to do it one time. It's all expenses paid for 4 weeks, and she said it's just life-changing. Which is amazing. I mean, to inspire your employees by sending them on this life-changing trip, not because it's so expensive and fancy, but because you're able to make an impact and you're seeing that impact right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had that same experience in Nicaragua a couple weeks ago where we went on a trip to really, it's called Ignite Experience, and it's really about purpose, right? Working with a purpose-based organization, but it's also very much about engagement. Because they've engaged the local community in understanding what problems do they need help solving, and they really need sustainability of their organization. So it's not an outside organization going in and saying, oh, we know what you need. Right? It's really that engagement with the locals. And then we saw the impact of the organization. We did a home visit. We saw how these people live. Most Americans can't even imagine what it's like. And yet the richness of the spirit and the happiness, these people don't complain. They don't know what it's like to live differently. But we were able to see, the value of the lunch program. The organization is Las Tias, or the Ants. They created an organization to help all the orphans after the Sandinista revolution. A lot of these kids, it was the only meal that they were getting. It's certainly a healthy, balanced meal. The mother that spoke to us, she said she often sent her daughter to school without food before this program. And she had been in 2 marriages with physical abuse. And she met this man when she was working in the market, which is where Las Tias began. And when they got together, he said, he went personally to Las Tias, told them the story of this little girl, and said, she's traumatized from years of this experience. And we met her, and she was singing on the bus with us, and now her grades are like 95 and 100.
Right.
I mean, it's just really, really cool. And when you see that kind of impact back to the IBM, you see it personally, you see it firsthand. It is life-changing. I know one of the things for IBM is they've researched that 80% of their people who have participated say it has increased the likelihood that they'll complete their career at IBM.
Wow.
Not just stay for a certain period of time. And so I think there's a lot of research, but that's just one particular story that illustrates that when there is some kind of purpose and it's authentic to the organization, and in that case meets strategic objectives, engagement is improved, people are happier overall, their productivity is higher, and it impacts retention. I mean, it's a direct link. So I think any organization that isn't taking that long-term view to recognize purpose and engagement are really what are going to drive that bottom line impact, and bottom line in a number of different metrics.
Right.
It's really short-sighted to not see that potential.
So what are some resources that could help individuals or companies kind of find that purpose and focus on that?
I think for individual leaders, I mean, certainly one of the articles that I thought was most powerful was an article in the Harvard Business Review back in 2014, and the authors were Nick Craig and Scott Snook. They really kind of gave a way of mining your past experiences for where would your leadership purpose come from. And I've certainly adapted that and used that with corporate leaders. The book by Aaron Hurst, who started the Taproot Foundation years ago here in Chicago and now runs an organization called Imperative. He has a book called The Purpose Economy, and really from a broader perspective, looking at the shift from agricultural age to the industrial age to the information and now to the purpose economy and how that purpose is really driving. So I think that book is a great resource. He writes a lot and posts a lot on purpose-driven CEOs, and they have a lot of offerings on the imperative.com website that I think can be really helpful for people. And then another leader who just does a lot of work, I've seen him speak at the Conscious Capitalism Conference maybe a year and a half ago, and then also a Conscious Capitalism chapter meeting here in Chicago just this year, is Tim Kelly. And he has a whole purpose coaching program.
Right.
So one of my friends has gone through his program and is starting with a whole purpose coaching business. There's just so many resources out there, and they target different things. But I think there's support out there.
So you mentioned Patagonia was a good example of this. What are some other companies, so if someone wanted to just study other companies that really have some good purpose-driven work?
I mean, the first example that always comes to mind for me is Southwest Airlines. And they were really built on making air travel accessible and affordable to every man, every American. And I think you see their values in action. It's been a long journey for them, and they've shown the value of decision-making aligned with your values. I think Southwest is just one of the most authentic, long-term organizations that lives by that purpose, and you see it in the sheer joy of their employees, and that's real. I have a friend who's been with them in Houston for 30 years, and she was just posting pictures of her big 30th celebration.
Wow.
And it was a huge party. Yeah, she's been a flight attendant for 30 years and would never consider doing anything else. And you see a lot of those stories that, and it's really consumers putting them out there, where when there's a positive story that says, oh, this person got bumped from a flight and Southwest found out what happened and they get them there, right? Like, they're never the airline that you hear
the negative things about.
Right?
You really don't.
The challenges about, right?
Yeah.
Ben & Jerry's is another one. And a tasty one at that.
Yeah, really.
That has really been founded on and honors purpose. Another, I mean, you also see a lot of the buy one, get one companies these days. Tom's of Maine, that gives away
the Tom's shoes, and then there's Tom. Yeah.
So Tom's shoes. Yes. That for every pair of shoes that they sell, they give a pair away. There's another, I think it's Bombas, which is a new sock company. They're doing the same thing.
Yes.
For every pair of quality socks that they sell at a high price, they also make sure that they're giving something away, giving something back.
So then as consumers, then we're purchasing to help others as well.
Absolutely.
And same thing with Patagonia, because of course I've heard all the great things Patagonia does. They take a very strong stance about the environment. And so, if you have a passion for that, then you're more likely to spend money there.
Absolutely.
Given that you focus on innovation, how does purpose relate to that?
Purpose is really where we start with innovation, right? So if we think about the front end of innovation being the discovering the insights, the problems and challenges to be solved, and the ones that we choose to solve for, and then the idea generation to meet those. On the back end of innovation, there's the designing that implementation plan and delivering impact. Purpose is really part of that discovering insights that needs to happen at the very beginning. Again, it can be about what matters to the organization, what matters to the leaders, and what problems do they then care to focus their energies to create solutions to solve for. I talk about the, journeying from purpose to impact. And that's because when you take that purpose into account in that first discovering insights, and then you create solutions and ideas that are going to deliver on those insights, again, you have to make sure that when it comes to implementation, that you are making decisions that honor that purpose, that honor what you really care about. And then if you move through that and deliver to the marketplace, then you're going to deliver that impact that really is that bottom line of innovation. Purpose has to be considered first, but it also has to then be alive throughout the decision-making process to really deliver that positive impact, whether it's for your employees, your customers, or the planet, right? The traditional triple bottom line, people, planet, profits. It all affects that. Another, interesting study that Google did on their own team success internally, they looked at what were the 5 factors that really drove team success. And it's interesting because psychological safety was one of them. Meaning, which I would also say is another way of honoring purpose, and then impact. Right? And so that was like a historical, not a theory, but what drove success in these teams that were really successful within our organization. I think, again, that's that journey from having meaning and having a focus, right? If you get a team or an organization really excited about, and their spirits, their hearts engaged in that purpose, and again, back to engagement, then you're gonna inspire people's creativity. You're gonna bring out more in them to deliver that impact that you really are wanting to deliver. And I always say, when people thrive, innovation thrives. It's not the other way around. If you really want people to be engaged and excited and their best creative selves, you need to give them that higher purpose, and you need to create the context and the conditions in which people thrive.
And I almost feel like it's one step further. It's not just providing that purpose that their own purpose can align with, but it's also allowing them to see the impact of that. Because if you don't see the impact, then it doesn't come full circle. It doesn't really have that meaning as just saying, okay, well, we have purpose.
I agree. I think that visibility to the impact. And a lot of times too, right, when we want to create new products, new services, what we want to do is, one of the market research methodologies is called an ethnography, right? Or it can just be some kind of immersion where we're actually out with the people that we're trying to solve the problems for. And that's what we were doing in Nicaragua. When you see the challenges firsthand and what kind of impact a program or a new product or service can offer, then people are going to find creative ways to deliver solutions that if they were just showing up and punching the clock and putting their heads down and getting whatever amount of work done, right? It changes everything. And seeing that impact up close and personal is really powerful. Another really great resource, Otto Scharmer. He's a professor at MIT. He wrote a book called Theory U. It really is about what's emerging from the future. Right? And so how do we get to that? And part of it is observe. Really understand what's happening for people, what's happening in their environments. Where are they having either unidentified or unarticulated needs? Where are they maybe working around something, right? Because there's not a solution for them. And then we have to retreat and reflect and really understand what are the impacts, what's happening here, and what solutions might we provide that address those concerns. And then coming out of that act in an instant, right? So we really take that upper left of the U, observe, retreat and reflect, and then go out and act really quickly to make those differences. Yeah. I think that's another really great resource that has all kinds of resources on it's called the presencinginstitute.org, and they have so many great exercises and guidelines how to even conduct a stakeholder interview, right?
Yeah.
And that's so important. I'm getting ready to start a project that is really looking at a mission-based organization, and they have a community of at least 300,000 potential, only 30-some thousand of which are actively part of their community. But what we really want to look at is how could we engage their hearts and not just their minds,
right,
in the mission of this organization? How can we really elevate the purpose of what the organization was founded on 50 plus years ago and really make it relevant and compelling and engage this community in a way that they're more excited, that they talk about it, that it's part of their lives and their work, and they have even a greater sense of pride and agency, really, in terms of what they're able to accomplish in the world, their own impact.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I am so excited about this. Like, purpose means so much to us, and with propsHR, that was something that we have our goal was to embrace it through our company, and we were able to incorporate into our product. So I appreciate you speaking with us today on our podcast. Now, if someone wanted to get in touch with you to help with innovation and ideas and grow their teams, how can they reach you?
Thank you for asking. A couple ways. They can simply send me an email at Lori, Lori, at innovationsavvy.com, or they can go on the website, and on the contact page, there's a form there, or they can certainly look me up on LinkedIn as well. Always happy to connect with people. I'm really looking forward to putting together both a webinar and a full service offering in the next month or two on journeying from purpose to impact, and really sharing that with people. And we'll of course do the free webinar so that people can get an idea of what would they get out of the program, and then probably like a 6-session, workshop series where they really are taken through that journey.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in once again. We will catch you on the flip side.
Bye-bye, Internet people.
Thank you for listening to propsHR, an engaging startup. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll follow our podcast and check out our website at propshr.com. Do you have a question about our startup or employee engagement software? Email us at info@propshr.com or tweet a question to us at propshr using hashtag propshrpodcast.